Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 1 and about certain campaigns and legendary lords in Warhammer 1 that are worth playing to this very day. It's been over 7 years, just over 7 years since this game came out, and there are still campaigns that are worth playing. However, before I talk about those specific campaigns, there are some things I need to mention about Warhammer 1 so you know what you're getting into if you haven't played it before. First off, Warhammer 1 is far more limited as a game than Warhammer 2 or Warhammer 3, especially when we're comparing them to Mortal Empires or Immortal Empires. So when we're looking at Warhammer 1, we have a far smaller map. The distances between settlements might be far greater, but the overall map size is significantly smaller than what we do get in the other Total War games, the Total War Warhammer games. On top of that, while you don't have climate, you do have severe restrictions on the types of territory you can occupy. So for instance, if you're going to play a greenskin campaign or a dwarf campaign, basically you're going to be limited to the Badlands and the mountains. So effectively, all the way from this corner over here to the north in the mountains, there are still some mountains over here, like the Black Mountains and so on. But for the most part, your campaign as the dwarves and the greenskins is going to be limited here. If you're playing an Imperial campaign or a Vampire Counts campaign, you do have the entire Empire and Bretonnia to play with, and of course Estalia and Tylea. But overall, there is a significant limitation on territory that you can occupy. On top of that, the factions themselves and the campaigns themselves are of a far more limited scope. Like right now, I'm playing the Greenskins, and it is turn 61. And at turn 61, I've only started recently getting certain settlements to tier 4, still struggling to get to tier 5, even Black Crag, my initial settlement. I do have a good number of armies running around over here to be certain. Like I have 2 armies over here, one here, one here. These are not, however, top tier armies. Like I have 4 armies, 5 armies, working on 5 armies. Like that's the most you're probably going to afford. And I do control quite a lot of territory in this particular campaign because I've conquered the entirety of the Badlands and basically the Silver Road. Like there's still some dwarven factions over here in the mountains, but I'm not too interested on going over there for a number of reasons. But yeah. There's severe limitations, and the cast invasion will start happening at about turn 40, and it's going to come in waves. Like you're going to start seeing this penalty in terms of cast corruption in your territory, and it's going to increase more and more and more as you play through the campaign until Archeon and the Doomtide does arrive. It is a more focused campaign than what we do have in Warhammer 3. That's both good and bad. It's good in the sense that it's great to play a more focused campaign once in a while, but obviously the replayability may not be there as we do have it in Immortal Empire. So there are certainly limitations with respect to it. There's limitations on economy. Supply lines surprisingly are not too bad. Like overall, I have like 6 armies and just a 25% supply line upkeep increase. So I am actually maintaining a decent amount of armies over here. But there are limitations. Like it takes a while to grow your settlements. It takes a while to get going. It takes a while to get your economy. Buildings in general are more expensive and less useful overall. Like over here as the Greenskins, for instance, like outside of like the heap of shiny stuff that I'm upgrading in every settlement, there's not really much I can do in a minor settlement that would give me a whole lot of value, I would say. Like there's certain structures dependent on the province we're talking about. Like there's certainly some resources in certain places, but a lot of the time you'll find yourself in a situation where, at least as the Greenskins, you are going to encounter limitation after limitation in terms of building slots, in terms of increasing hero capacity, and the number of armies you can maintain, and so on and so forth. Another thing to mention when it comes to the limitations of a campaign is getting legendary lords. For instance, Azhag here is only level 12, Grimgor is 21, and I haven't actually gotten any other item except Getsnik. So it is actually difficult to do the items because they actually require you to do quest chains. For instance, here I need to find the Greenskin tribe faction to do a hero action, to start doing like Warzak to unlock Warzak's first quest item, let alone the other two, which are going to require him to get to rank 18. So, limited campaign. But there is one key advantage. In this game, the auto-resolve works significantly far differently. Settlements don't have a defender's advantage. And so when you attack a settlement and it's just the garrison, then they're a garrison that, like, look at Varenka Hills, like this garrison, any real army would sweep it aside in a proper battle, and they do in auto-resolve. So what this means is the battles that you're fighting are generally more meaningful. And while you certainly can do a lot of a campaign and fight very few battles, which I don't necessarily see as a problem because most battles, I'll be blunt, are not that entertaining. But the battles you do end up fighting feel far more meaningful, even if there are fewer of them. But it depends on a campaign-by-campaign basis. Like, the Greenskins might have a better auto-resolve than other races, or the foes they're dealing with might not have the same kind of auto-resolve situation. Like, if you're playing the Vampire campaign, or if you're dealing with a lot of provincial capitals, then you will probably have to fight those more battles manually. But it depends on a campaign-by-campaign basis. But suffice it to say, the battles that you do fight overall in a campaign, as any race, are the more meaningful battles. They're against proper armies. They're not against garrison. So one of the issues I have in Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires is the fact that you do end up having to fight a lot of battles manually against garrisons, or you accept the fact you're going to take significant casualties. Here, like if I take Grimgor, right, and I just auto-resolve Akandor over here, then I don't really take too many casualties from that. And on top of that, when you auto-resolve a battle against an army on an open field, or you fight it regularly on open field, you're not going to encounter the same kind of situation that you do encounter in Warhammer 3, where if you auto-resolve it on an open field, you just eliminate it. No, you don't eliminate it. It can be in force march, it doesn't matter. You will not completely eliminate that army, unless it's an ambush, I believe, and I'm not entirely certain about that either. So your foes may escape far more often than you might think. So again, you've got more field battles, you've got more meaningful battles. So overall, like, there are certainly some advantages, but there's also disadvantages. Diplomacy is, of course, also far more limited than Warhammer 3. So with all of that being said, at number 3 we have Azhag the Slaughterer, or Grimgor. They both share a starting position, and they can unlock the other, depending on who you pick. So if you start with Grimgor, you can unlock Azhag. If you start with Azhag, you can unlock Grimgor. Now, here's the main advantage in a campaign as Azhag. You do get income from sacking settlements, research, diplomatic relations. All of that is pretty solid, but that's not really what's important over here. The starting position over here is pretty interesting in a lot of ways. You have this all-out insane war between the Greenskins and the Dwarves from the very, very start of your campaign. So things can get pretty hectic, and minor factions in this game will throw a lot of armies against you if they can. But if you play your cards right, you can certainly end up dominating the Battlelands as the Greenskins. My recommendation, by the way, with Warhammer 1 is to get the Public Order penalty removal mod if you're playing on Legendary, because otherwise you're just going to face the constant annoyance of rebellions throughout the course of your campaign, and while they're not really an issue, they are kind of frustrating to deal with. You'll have to resolve most of them when they're attacking provincial capital, but you'll have to do a lot of emergency recruitment as well. It's kind of annoying. But the Battlelands can be pretty interesting because of the all-out war that's happening over here between Dwarves and Greenskins. But between Azhag and Grimgor, my recommendation for Azhag is because Grimgor is much easier to unlock. Like, if you're playing Grimgor, you need to get the settlement to tier 4, and you need to build a shaman hut in order to unlock Azhag. That's going to take quite a few turns in this campaign. Whereas if you play Azhag, all you need to do to unlock Grimgor is slaughter 10 sets of captives after a battle. And slaughtering is pretty easy, because all you need to do is fight the battle and then slaughter the captives. That is all you need to achieve during a campaign as Azhag. And there's quite a lot of advantages, suffice to say, in having both Azhag and Grimgor running around your campaign from the very start of it. But of course there's disadvantages as well, because Grimgor does have better faction effects, especially the campaign movement range, which does matter in the Battlelands. I would say if you're playing just a very short campaign, like 30 turns or so, yeah, Grimgor is probably better. But if you're looking for a long campaign, if you're looking to actually defeat the Warriors of Chaos and win this campaign, is probably a better decision to play as Azhag, because you'll be running around with Grimgor as well by your side. You'll still get his significant benefits. And why it is important to unlock these Legendary Lords quickly, it comes down to the fact that it comes down to the quest chains, because obviously Legendary Lords are more powerful with their items for the most part. Well, it is, if you unlock Azhag slower, then it's going to take you a lot longer to be able to get those quest items, which will obviously result in a weakened state, but it's certainly doable. And number 2 is Grombrindal, the White Dwarf. He has a fantastic faction effect in the sense that he does get some fairly substantial benefits to his own army, and to himself basically. In this case, I've chosen to go minus 20% upkeep, minus 10% of the construction cost in his region, and recruitment cost of minus 10% in his force as well. It ends up being fairly significant. And Grombrindal's special skill line is his blue skill line, which is exactly the same in a lot of ways as it is in Warhammer 3, and it is absurd. 15% campaign movement range for all characters faction-wide, casualty replenishment, recruitment cost, and unit experience. Grombrindal is absurdly strong. And on top of that, if you are playing Grombrindal, it is pretty easy to unlock for Grim, because all you need to do is deal with 8 grudges, and you will deal with 2 of them pretty quickly in this campaign. You will have no issues unlocking Forgrim pretty quickly. I mean, Forgrim is pretty powerful through his Lord skill line, sure, but you can get them pretty quickly in a campaign. Whereas Grombrindal may end up being the hardest to actually get, because you do need to get a tier 4 settlement and build a monument of Grimnir in order to be able to unlock him. Now you may want to do this all the same for the reduction in vampiric and chaos corruption and slayer recruitment, but it is certainly going to take time. And having Grombrindal from the very start of your campaign is going to confer you a significant advantage. And yes, you are in the equivalent of the Thunderdome of Warhammer 1 over here in the Battlelands with Grimgor, the Bloody Spears, and others to deal with through the early game of this campaign. It is especially nasty with the Bloody Spears because they have these 2 settlements over here, so if you ignore them and you just go south and deal with Grimgor, well, don't be surprised if they start sending full stacks against you from the north. So that ends up being a problem. Grombrindal, through this major upkeep benefit, can actually maintain more armies early on in his campaign than the other dwarf legendary lords can. Or you could go with casualty replenishment and public order. That also works as well. Finally, and number 1 is Emperor Karl Franz of the Empire. Yes, the Empire is actually worth playing in Warhammer 1, and the poster child of Total War Warhammer, which is certainly Karl Franz, is worth playing in this particular game. His faction effects, like beyond his Lord skill line, he is actually pretty easy to unlock as well. All you need to do is confederate another faction. If you're playing as Gelt or Volkmar, that's all you need to do, confederate another Imperial faction, which is pretty easy considering you start with pretty good relations with Talabayam. So it's quite likely that the first faction you will end up confederating is going to be Talabayam itself. Now, here's the thing, though, about playing Karl Franz. You do have minus 10% upkeep for Ice Guard and Greatswords, 5% campaign movement range, and crucially, 2 Lord Recruit rank. It is that Lord Recruit rank, I would argue, that makes Karl Franz worth playing. Beyond that, his quests are certainly very involved and do require quite a bit of effort to actually unlock the Reikland Runefang, Galmaraz, and the Silver Seal. So better get going with that from the very start of your campaign. That said, the downside of this particular campaign is the fact that in order to unlock Volkmar and to unlock Gelt, you're going to need to get Altdorf to tier 4 and then get the Temple of Sigmar for Volkmar and get the Altdorf Enclave of Battle Wizards for Gelt. I mean, you would want those structures anyway, in Altdorf, to be clear, but it's certainly going to be slow to be able to unlock them in your campaign. But thankfully you do. Thankfully, like, an Imperial campaign is not quite the insane Thunderdome level situation that dwarves and greenskins have to deal with in the Badlands. Is more relaxed, because you don't care if half the Empire is burning in this campaign. In fact, you should expect it to burn, in point of fact, and you're trying to just keep everything together as much as possible. No Imperial authority bullshit to deal with in this game. Instead, what you do get to deal with are a bunch of offices that do give you various benefits in your campaign. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why you care about that Lord recruit rank, because, yeah, you do need Lords to get to a certain level in order for them to be assigned to certain offices. So you being able to recruit Lords at rank 3 is a pretty damn important benefit in your campaign. He's kind of bugged there, by the way. Like, for instance, like you can get, like, I can get minus 10% construction costs for all buildings in the province that he's in, or get 5%, like that I'll be able to get, but I'll be able to get these offices easier than I would otherwise. That's what is important in Karl Franz's campaign. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more. And if you have any other campaigns you'd recommend to play in Warhammer 1, please let me know.